So welcome to the Market Mentors podcast, Lorena.
Thank you, Matt. It's such a pleasure to first to meet you and second to be here. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So before we get stuck into this one, I'd love to know what your relationship is with revenue ops.
It's a very intrinsic. That's what I can say. I was working in the consultancy space around 4 years ago, almost 5. And we were the first company that really started to do revenue operations as a service. You didn't really know about this because nobody did. Revenue operations was not a thing back in 2016, the entire methodology. So it was my company, along with other partners like G2 Crowd at that moment, that opened the category to really kind of allow the space for other for other services to appear. But that's kind of where everything started. I fell in love with it. I started to read about it, and I was like, this absolutely makes sense. Fast forward to today, I am very happy to say that I joined the corporate world. I am with JLL as the director of global marketing revenue operations. And what that means is that now I am trying to effectively do this transition from legacy operations to revenue operations, now with a global team, now with a company that, of course, is a public traded company. And now the team is way bigger than what I used to manage. And the methodology is just very close to my heart. So I think that answers your question.
So with a global team, it's early mornings and late nights.
It's crazy schedules. Let's just leave it like that, because some days is very early mornings. Some other days is very late nights. So it actually depends on which time of the day you're talking to me. I'll have a different answer for that question.
Perfect. So it might seem like this is an obvious question to start with, but I think it's important because there's sometimes a little bit of confusion around it. Mm-hmm. But what is revenue operations?
Right. And I think every time that you talk about something that it's relatively new, you need to start by defining it. And I can say revenue operations, Matt, is not really a new thing. It has always existed in some sort of regard, just without the official title, right? But the first thing that we need to mention is, when you talk revenue operations, you talk different things. You talk different components. The first of them is, it's a customer-centric methodology. Yes or yes. If you're not focusing on your customer, then it's not revenue operations. It can be GTM operations, it can be sales operations, it can be many, many other things, but it needs to be external, focused on the customer. Second of all, that methodology really describes, people are going to kill me because I think we're sick of talking about alignment, but it is true. You do need to have the alignment piece precisely with the customer-facing teams, which are, in this case, marketing, sales, customer success. And of course, the other thing is you need to have a leader, right? It doesn't happen without a leader. It can be a director of revenue operations. It can be a CRO, which is also a very, very new title. Whatever that might be, you need a leader that kind of matches everything together. And all of this, why do you align the teams? You do it to achieve revenue growth. If you're not looking after revenue, then you're probably a charity and you're not an organization. So those are kind of the three things that are main components to what is revenue operations, what is this new word that appeared back in 2016, maybe even 2015. So I think that would cover it, those three things.
And why do you think revenue operations is important then for the success of B2B companies then today?
I think because it's a door opener, right? It allows new conversations to happen in the table, in the revenue table. One of them being, for example, retention. You never really heard about retention being a priority. And it is because of revenue operations that we're starting to see more operations that are not really sales based kind of come to the discussion. And since it's a customer centric way of thinking, as I was describing, it brings customer success to very early stages of the sales cycles, which is another thing that we never really saw. And this marries with the retention talk that I was talking about. It's way more expensive to focus on net new than focusing on landing and expansion. It is important because revenue operations brings kind of the bacon to home and creates a stronger rapport with the end user. And therefore, adding revenue operations to an organization makes that growth even more fluid. And it allows also the business to adapt to changes that might happen in the market or that are going to happen eventually. I mean, if there's something that we saw through COVID, is that a lot of the arms from marketing disappeared. A lot of us were in the situation where we lost budgets, we lost channels, we lost, for example, direct mail kind of changed a lot. Field marketing pretty much disappeared. So I think with revenue operations is this kind of instance that allows you, and it becomes a full department. There's organizations that are starting to hire for revenue operations, and when it's a full department, it allows for this adaptability to uncertainty to happen.
And I think about our audience, which is sort of B2B tech companies. So many more companies are following a product-led growth strategy or are selling their software on a subscription, so SaaS. And that is totally crucial about the customer success piece, the customer support piece, because not only are you selling it, you've got to keep the customer, because it's so easy to change suppliers these days. There's so much competition out there. So I guess that sort of lends itself to companies in our industry as well.
Yep.
Do you think there's a particular type of company that should be thinking about revenue ops, like a particular size of company? Does a company get to a certain stage then, and it has to start thinking about revenue ops?
Here's the reality, Matt. Thinking about revenue operations won't hurt your business in any stage that you are. Even if you're a Series A, most likely you should start thinking about it. Now, executing on revenue operations, that's a different story. Definitely, we're talking about a model that it's going to be particular to every business. But what will differ is prioritization, for example. Maybe companies that are early stages, as I said, Series A, seed funding, etc., they won't really see the value yet, as a lot of the complex implementation of revenue operations comes with pains that don't appear in Series A. What am I talking about? So, for example, if you're growing your team in Series B from 50 reps to 30 reps to 35 to 60, etc., most likely your sales instance is going to start suffering alterations. And with that, your systems are going to start changing. So those pain points that we see after Series B, Series C, all the way to IPO are kind of the sweet spot for revenue operations to be implemented. For example, another thing that has to do with sales. If you are not hitting quota, you don't need a CRO. You don't need revenue operations, because your priorities, it is what I'm talking about. You need to fix, first of all, how do you make sure that you hit quota every single quarter? However, as I was telling you, they can absolutely, every single organization should and be thinking about alignment between the customer-facing teams and start processes around having, another example, clean data. Clean data is one of the biggest things that we are seeing that doesn't allow decision makers to make decisions. So I think those things, if they can start early in the process and early in the days of the organization, you're going to set yourself for success.
And I guess that's where we've seen the sort of increase in the CRO role itself that you mentioned earlier, the need to have that person maybe controlling things. Some people argue that maybe actually should that person be there in between a sort of CMO and a CEO. But I guess that's the advantage of having a CRO.
Yeah, that you don't have to fight, right, between both of them. But if you don't understand who is the CRO, by the way, Chief Revenue Officer, for those that don't know the title yet, it can be very beneficial to have someone that is kind of that is between everyone, trying to make sure that things happen. That's generally the CRO. The thing that, and we're kind of debating a little bit the conversation, but the background on that person is still very unknown. People are testing VP of sales that become CROs. People are trying to test, like, okay, if it's not sales, then it's marketing. Then if it's not marketing, I mean, I haven't seen anyone coming from customer success, but I would be very interested to see someone raising to the occasion that probably knows the customer better than sales or marketing. So who knows? We're gonna see more things develop in the next coming years.
No, indeed. And if we sort of take it down a level, then we've obviously talked about the sort of the company level, why a company should start thinking about this. But if we think about a revenue operations person themselves, then what are they typically responsible for then on a sort of day-to-day basis?
Oh, that's a great question, because that would be me. What the hell am I doing every single day? Generally, when we talk about like the revenue operations person, this person's main responsibility is be hyper vigilant of the entire revenue process from beginning to end. So from awareness to advocacy. It doesn't finish at the opportunity level. It finishes way further than that. But also this person is constantly thinking about how to monetize products externally. How do we make sure that the features of the new products are indeed needed? How do we make sure that we scale those products? And how internally our day-to-day job is gaining buy-in? Because that's something that doesn't happen from one day to the next one. I think gaining buy-in from the entire organization is a full-time job, especially right now. For example, at my role, the education process of making people understand that revenue operations is a need and kind of dissecting these functions. It's really, really hard, especially when you're talking about a 90,000 employees organization, right? Like just finding the right person to talk to, it can be very, very, very draining. On the other hand, I think this is it's a bridge type of role, I like to call it, because he or she or them is like the glue that holds the team together. Like it's this person that I was describing to you before, that it's not going to be fighting over who holds the budget for what or who owns the tool stack for what. It's actually the person that makes everyone safe at the revenue table.
We like the United Nations.
Exactly. And then on the day-to-day, there's another piece as well, that is, how do we make sure that the KPIs or key performance indicators are digestible to everyone in order to reach that customer obsession that we've been discussing in the past questions. So it's a kind of it's a role that it's still very creative, that it's still very, how do I make sure that people listen to me? But at the same time, the same brain, the left side brain has to say, you know what, let's look at the numbers, let's look at the metrics. Are we measuring the right things? Let's pass these to certain teams, etc., etc. So it's a person that does a lot. That's what I can say.
It sounds like it. It reminds me actually a bit of a product marketing role, in the sense that on the one hand, you've got to be very operational. You've then got to work with stakeholders, but then you've also got to be super creative as well. All these sort of things sort of are quite different. And the same as yourself, you're sort of working with stakeholders and working on technology and thinking about the business broadly. You don't find that breadth in a lot of roles generally. Yep. What about sort of moving on to measurements then? A company's got to, if they're going to be hiring for revenue ops, they're going to be thinking about, what are we going to gain from it? What are we going to benefit from it? And obviously, if you're in a revenue ops role, you're going to be thinking about how you should be measured and how you should be able to define the success of your role. How does that sort of work then in terms of measurements?
I love this, because I am one of the marketers that believes, well, actually, I should stop calling myself a marketer, because now I understand very well sales and customer success. So I'm a revenue executive. That's what I would say. But I am of the belief, like, if you cannot measure it, then most likely it's going to be a headache. You can still do it, but it's going to be a headache. So to defining, like, how do you measure success of revenue operations? I think there's a basic level that everyone should be looking at, and then there's taking it to the next level. So on the basic level, you should be comparing the organization with typical volume, value, and velocity benchmarks, and therefore conversion rates. How fast an opportunity becomes from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, etc., etc. Or if you want to call it AQL to MQL, MQL to SQL to SAL to conversion, however you are managing that funnel. That's the first thing. Comparing those three, what we call and what was established by my previous company, the 3VC model. So again, repetition, volume, value, velocity, and conversion rates. Then taking that to the more, I want to be more sophisticated at the party. We can start looking at things that are a little more complex. What are those? Forecasting. Having a low variance of their forecasting efforts, that's a must. If you already hit that point where you are effectively doing forecasting, because again, if you're not doing forecasting, positive or negative, then it's kind of really hard to measure. The other thing, on-time QBRs. And the last thing that a friend of mine calls home base is your SLAs. What's the time of response on those SLAs? So I think those things are kind of taking the extra step, and that's how you're gonna really. And in this case, if you have forecasting effectively, most likely you already have the leader of the revenue operations organization inside of your company. So this is what they should be very, very vigilant about.
And where's the best place to go and get those benchmark figures then?
That's going to be, for example, in SaaS, there's really good reports that come from companies like Forrester. Yeah. Those companies that all they do is research. Go and take a look at those, because generally you have a really good understanding of where you should be, according to your industry, of course. But there's a couple of resources there. There's also communities. Paid communities. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit more. But generally, be the person that is confident asking. If you have a friend in a similar position or in another company that it's also a SaaS company, go and be brave and say like, hey, can you share? Is it possible for you to share what is your definition of a lead? Like, start from the basics, and then go and say, are you having on-time QBRs? Are you having SLAs? What's the time of conversion? How long it takes from stage 3 to stage 4 to happen? How many days we're talking about? How long is your sales cycles? So by having that information and be the person that asks the questions, I think that's the right direction to go always with everything.
Great stuff. And sort of moving on to the team itself then, I mean, I guess the first starting point is hiring one person into a revenue ops role, but how do you see a company evolve its revenue ops team?
That's a really hard one for me, and I'm going to keep it as brief as I can, because the thing that we were discussing, Matt, on the sense of we still don't have on stone who are the best people to raise up to revenue operations. In my opinion, it should be people that have spent enough time learning about the business as a holistic thing. So, for example, if you have your Salesforce architect, try to have that person learn the marketing automation system as well. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a Eloqua, Pardot, Marketo, whatever it is. Have them do a basic training. And that's how I see a company evolving, by having a full generation of people that are very comfortable in knowing the things that are not their specialty. So we call this in design the T-shaped people, where the short part of the T is your, let's call it a specialty, but you are equally dangerous in other senses of the organization. So I think that's how I see revenue operations. For example, myself, I don't come from marketing operations. Actually, I'm not that technical. But what I am doing is more on the strategic level, and I know my way through creating reports in Salesforce, for example. I don't crack when I see a report in Salesforce, and I think that's what makes me unique, that I understand the different terms that create revenue in a company. And I think that's how I see a company evolving. Once you have your first leader, go and hire the people that are itchy about knowledge, because everyone is going to say, oh, that's curiosity. No. Curiosity is another entire thing. But find people that are thirsty for knowledge, thirsty for knowing how things are made. And those people are going to be great additions to your revenue operations team.
I loved your phrase, Lorena. equally dangerous. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal it. I mean, you've sort of touched on it there. I think a lot of companies, when they're thinking about this sort of stuff, well, I need to hire a revenue ops person. Their immediate thought will be to go, let's go and hire somebody in a revenue ops role. Now, it's a pretty small pool of people that you're going to be looking at if that is your way forward. But if you were thinking sort of generally about the sort of skills that somebody might need, the skills, the attributes to be good in revenue ops, so that maybe they can go and sort of broaden that pool either internally within their own company or perhaps broaden that pool sort of externally. What are some of the things that you think make a revenue ops person a good revenue ops person?
I love this question because I am actually in the process of hiring right now. I am hiring one analyst and one person for the EMEA market. And I'm starting to ask myself, how do I know that these people are going to be successful? Because I never want to be the person that says, you know what, I hire you and now I need to let you go. It hasn't happened to me, thank God. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure it's going to happen at some point, but I wouldn't like to be responsible for that. So one of the main things that I am starting to ask is, do I feel that the person knows the basic stuff, like touching base? For example, as I was saying, correctly defining what is a lead. Can you tell me what was a lead in your previous company and how you were nurturing it? Can you walk me through what happened to that lead from beginning to end, and explain it in a way that it's interesting to me? I think this is gonna spot someone that understands the health of the business and how they are thinking about revenue operations. Because if you cannot describe to me that process, or let's call it that customer journey, because at the end, a lead is a potential customer or a future customer. If you cannot talk to me about that journey on like how did it enter the bow tie and how it ended, how it became a successful customer, how the repetition happened, the renewal. If you cannot talk to me about that, I think for me it's a negative flag. It's a really red flag. So that's where it would start. Then the second thing is they need to be comfortable in the tool stack. The days where we were just traditional marketers, for example, people coming from marketing, are gone. You cannot be a marketer in this world if you do not understand automation, because a lot of automation happens in the process now, thank God, because we couldn't scale businesses without the automation that is happening today. So that's for marketing. For sales, I think people that focus on, but I have charisma and I know how to make a sale happen, but then you have no idea of what's content creation, for example. If you come from sales and you don't know how to convey a story or how to sell to the customer, in terms of like you don't understand what happened before that content hit your desk, I probably don't want to talk to you. I want to talk about people that understand their partners, right? Like if you worked in sales, most likely your outreach cadences came from marketing, most likely. If you are doing, for example, ABM, most likely you partner with sales. It's a give and take. So people that come from marketing, they should understand sales and vice versa. Therefore, if you come from customer success, which is a very interesting piece of the puzzle, I think you should understand the analytical part of it, because it's very new that customer success has KPIs. So, for example, churn and attrition, which is kind of the same thing, and then positive feedback and NPS scores. Those things are relatively new for the customer success operations side of it. So I think what is missing on customer success people is precisely the analytical piece of information that marketers and salespeople generally have. So that's how I am running the processes right now, by kind of, first of all, understanding what's your background. Okay, starting from there, what are the things that you can bring to the table, and how do I assess that you are going to be the right person?
And do you think it's easier to teach people the technical aspects then, or the softer aspects, those, the stakeholder management, the stuff like that? Would you lean either way?
No, I think the first thing that I look for is precisely the soft skills. If you already have those in place, very likely I'm going to hire you, because I believe everything, like, we live in the internet era, right? Like, if you want to learn something technically, you're going to be able to find a course, or like a video in YouTube, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But you can learn a tool pretty much and then be proficient in the tool, probably like in 5 months, even less, depending on the complexity of the tool, of course. But I think sorry for my voice, is kind of coming and going. But
That's
I
okay.
think soft skills are those things that they never taught us at school, right? There's very few people that are good at understanding themselves in order to be able to manage others. I think it's really hard to find really good managers, and I'm talking people managers, not process managers, because you can still be a manager, and then what you're managing is a process and not directly people. But like people that interact with other humans every single day, and that they do it effectively, and that they are inspiring, and then they keep the smile in their faces, is really hard to find. So I think for me that's a tough one. It's a tough one for sure.
It's interesting you say that, because I think a lot of companies think about the technical bits first. You know, even when they're sort of writing the job description, must be, you know, a Marketo expert user or whatever it might be. They do tend to sort of think about the technical bits and then bolt on the sort of softer skills at the back of it. But, you know, I think if you talk to most companies about why people are successful in roles, it's because them as a person, rather than necessarily their technical skills. Because like you said, you can go out there and sort of learn it. So,
yeah, and it's an addictive thing, Matt. I think, especially after COVID, if we learned something, is that people are really complex, and we lost the social muscle about it. Like, I feel that we became way more clumsy than we already were before COVID. Now people are becoming more in their heads, more in their own skins, because I mean, we didn't talk to people, we didn't hug anyone, we didn't interact. For people that are generally introverts like me, the change was a little less aggressive. But for people that were social by nature, and that they used to be in events every single day, and that they used to talk to the teams every single day, I think the change was massive and it was brutal. And now, coming back from that, I think the organizations need to start being almost like caregivers. So it's interesting. I'm very, very interested in this aspect. But to your point, yeah, for me, the soft skills are gonna be, without a doubt, what is gonna take you to the next level.
Great stuff. And there obviously aren't any jobs out there that are easy. There are always challenges within jobs. For people that are thinking about revenue ops and thinking this sounds really exciting, to sort of balance it out a little bit then, I mean, what are some of the challenges for revenue ops people at the moment?
I think, first of all, the consistency in the tool stack. It's been years of, there's a solution for every single problem that you have. And therefore we go and let's be honest, like, the tools are like shiny toys, and they can be really fun. Like, there are tools that do impressive things. For example, I've seen amazing things in content repositories, and like content syndication, and we're seeing AI, and like there's this really cool tool that, I mean, I don't know if it exists anymore, but it used to be an AI tool that you would integrate to your Slack, and then you could be able to find things in Slack. That it's kind of a problem that everyone has, that I know. Finding information in Slack, it can be a nightmare. So this thing used to be an AI tool that you would educate, and then it would find the information that you were looking for. So I think the consistency in the tool stack is missing, because we have overload of tools. As we got excited by buying and buying and buying and adding, there's the point that the revenue operations person is coming to the table and say, do we actually need this tool stack? Is it actually functioning towards the customer rapport that we want to build? Is it, or on the other side, is it enough? Do we need to buy more? How is the budget working around that? So I think, that's the first one. And then the other one, and I already touched a little bit on this, I don't think we're doing enough negative forecasting. And what I mean by negative forecasting is, Um, have we spent time going through why are we losing deals? Why let's go back 6 months, let's go back a year, let's go back whatever amount of time that you want to look into. But if you start seeing at the reasons why you have lost opportunities in the past, and if you see that those trends are still happening to today, that is negative forecasting. And I don't see organizations do that enough. I think they are focusing on when is this deal going to close. Yeah, but if you don't see why you were losing deals in the past, there's a really good chance that your forecasting is not going to be accurate. So I think you have to do both of them at the same time. And then the last one, which is always going to be a pain, I don't think there is someone that has the rules of engagement on like how do you really achieve alignment. I think you can start by putting the right people in the right place, and that's something that, for example, at my organization, I'm learning the hard way. By saying, do you really need to be in this room? Yes or no? And if you are brave enough to say, you know what, I am not needed in this meeting, let me get out and let me bring the right person. That's something that takes a lot of bravery. I couldn't describe it in another way, because there's a lot of politics in many companies. So alignment is a really, really tough one. I don't see someone that has enjoyed the process of like saying, hey, this has been a ride in the park and this is how I did it in 3 months. No, I haven't till today. If there's someone that has done that in 3 months, please come to me, because I'm gonna need. I'll buy you lunch and drinks and every type of thing that you might want.
Sorry, and going back to your negative forecasting then, do you think that's because companies just aren't doing those sort of win-loss interviews in the first place then? Or do you think because those win-loss interviews perhaps sit with product marketing and there may be other teams, or maybe they're being done and just not looked at?
No, I think you're right, Matt. It's because they are not being done. We don't talk to our customers often because we are very, very focused on the product and how to make new features and how to push it with the right messaging. But all these things need to be connected to feedback that comes directly to the customer. So that win-loss interview doesn't really happen often.
Where do you see revenue ops heading?
In my opinion, I think it's a methodology that is going to define GTM teams moving forward. I think it will raise to the occasion, causing more and more larger organizations to start implementing it. Because right now, there's a lot, it's a hot topic. Revenue operations is very hot, especially in the SaaS space, because these are hyper fast organizations. What you can implement in a SaaS will never ever happen with the speed that it happens in SaaS. In SaaS, it will never happen in the corporate world, for example. So that's why revenue operations is a very sweet dish for SaaS companies, because you can implement it fast and you can iterate and you can prototype and you can do all these things that revenue operations feeds from. However, the moment that we start seeing all other public traded companies implement these methodologies is the moment that we're going to say, you know what, we've made it. This is a real thing. We don't have to question it anymore. We don't have to define it anymore. I think that's a moment where people are going to stop asking the what and they are going to start asking the how. I think we're done with hey, is this a real thing? Can you define it for me? I think it's going to be a time in the next 5 to 10 years where like everyone is going to be familiar with revenue operations. Now it's going to be more the, wait, how did you say that I was going to do this? Or how exactly do I implement this? Or what are the KPIs that I am measuring? So that's where I am seeing it going, for sure.
Great stuff. Well, it's an exciting space. I mean, if somebody wants to learn more about this, then where would you suggest people go to find out information?
As I was saying, my best go-to place for knowledge is communities. And there's amazing spaces within the tech space that have served me in a million ways. One of them is Pavilion, for example. That's a paid one. Yep. It's executives discussing interesting stuff. Then another one is Women in Revenue, very close to my heart. Very, very strong woman, kind of making change happen. And you can have all the discussions that you want inside of those communities. And there are some more specific ones, like, for example, the Moz Pros, which they talk mostly about marketing ops. And then you can kind of do your own adventure type of thing, where like if you are a member like me, I'm a member of everything in this world. So if you can, the more, the better and the merrier, because the more knowledge that you have, the best that you're putting yourself in order to create a self-opinion, right? You need to have criteria. You need to read something and be able to have an opinion about that. And the only way to do that is expose yourself to many, many different opinions, because this thing hasn't been set on stone yet.
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat. Your passion comes through. You make me excited about revenue ops, and I'm sure you'll be doing the same for our audience. All I would like to say is keep being dangerous.
That's something that describes me. Yeah, but the good dangerous. Like you don't have to be scared around me. If anything, all the contrary. But I love that you love that about what I said, Matt. It's been a delight talking to you. I have so much fun talking about this. I could be talking about this all day or every day. I just don't think people are going to join my voice for more than 30 minutes. But I dare everyone to go and learn a little bit more about revenue operations.
It'll have to be over tequilas next time.
I'm game.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.